Have you ever wondered why some truths seem to be hidden from you? Because certain conversations take place only in whispers and certain knowledge is only passed from man to man, as if they were secrets too dangerous to be revealed publicly? Today we will look at something that Socrates, the great Greek philosopher, discovered over 2,400 years ago, but which few men truly understand. Perhaps that is why many women prefer that you do not have access to this information, not out of malice, but because when a man truly awakens to this truth, he becomes something else entirely. Socrates once said that the unexamined life is not worth living. But what does that really mean for you, the 20th century man? It means that most of us live on autopilot, reacting to the stimuli around us without ever pausing to question why we do what we do. Think with me about this. How many times have you found yourself doing something just to impress a woman? How many decisions have you made based on who thought she wanted to hear or see? How many times you changed your behavior, your opinion, or even your dreams because you believed it would make you more attractive? If you're honest with yourself, the answer will probably bother you, because the truth is that most men spend their entire lives chasing female approval without realizing that this desperate search is exactly what makes them less attractive. Socrates understood something fundamental about human nature. He knew that in every person, three forces in constant battle: reason, spirit, and desire. Reason is your ability to think, analyze, and make conscious decisions. The mind is your courage, determination, willpower, and desire. Desires are all the impulses that drag you down, that make you act without thinking, that make you a slave to your own needs. Now comes the part that will shake you up. The woman in relationship dynamics represents the ultimate test of this inner struggle. She is not your enemy. She is not something that needs to be conquered or dominates. She is the mirror that reflects exactly where you are in this war between reason, spirit, and desire. When you are with a woman and you feel this desperate need to please her, to be accepted by her, to change yourself in order to conquer her, what happens is your desire dominates your reason. You allow a momentary impulse to control your decisions and your identity. But when you develop this Socratic understanding of yourself, when you really know who you are, which represents something magical, you stop needing external validation. You stop dancing to the tune of others. You become what Socrates would call a virtuous man. Virtue, for Socrates, wasn't just being nice or polite. Virtue was having an excellent character. It meant being so firm in your principles and so clear in your values that nothing in the outside world can shake you. And here's the paradox that will blow your mind. The less you need female approval, the more attractive you become. Think of a ship's mast in the middle of a storm. The wind blows hard, the waves beat against the hull, but the mast remains firm. It doesn't bend, it doesn't break, it doesn't try to please the wind. It is simply that which is firm, reliable, and unshakable. The woman is like the wind in this analogy. It will test your firmness, your consistency, your authenticity, and if you bend, if you start dancing while it blows, you have failed the test. But if you remain steadfast, if you maintain your essence, regardless of her approval, something interesting happens. She stops trying to shake you and you begin to admire their solidity, because deep down, every woman knows that she needs a man who is greater than her. Not physically, but emotionally and spiritually. This doesn't mean being arrogant or insensitive. It means knowing your worth and not trading it for a few crumbs of attention. It means understanding that happiness and meaning in life come from within, not from without. Socrates spent his days asking questions that concerned people. He asked things like, "Do you really know what courage is? Or you can define me as, what is justice?" People thought they knew the answers, but when he started questioning them, they realized they knew nothing. Now I ask you the same question. Do you really know who you are? Not what you do, not what you have, not how others see you, but who you really are deep down. Most men have never really asked themselves this question. They define themselves by their relationships, by their work, by the recognition they receive from others. But if you strip all that away, these external things, what remains? Who are you when you are alone, without an audience, without anyone to impress? This is the Socratic journey of self-knowledge. It is a deep dive into your own soul to find out what your true values are, your true goals, your true nature. And it is terrifying for most people because it requires brutal honesty with yourself. But here's what happens when you go on this journey. You develop what philosophers call internal loci of control. This means that your happiness, your peace, your self-esteem no longer depends on external factors. It comes from within. Imagine what your life would be like if you never needed validation from others again. Imagine what it would be like to wake up every day knowing exactly who you are and what you represent, regardless of what others think of you. Imagine what it would be like to connect with women without that desperate fear of being accepted, without the need to constantly prove your worth. This isn't just a philosophical fantasy. It's possible, and men, throughout history, they have achieved this, but it requires discipline, constant self-examination, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths about oneself. Socrates also taught, "I only know that I know nothing." This intellectual humility is crucial because when you believe you already know everything, you stop learning, growing, and evolving. But when you remain open and recognize your limitations, you are constantly evolving. In relationships with women, this means not assuming that you understand how they think or what they want. Instead, become a student of human nature, observing and learning, but always maintaining your identity. Here's something that might shock you. Women don't want a man who puts them on a pedestal. They want a man so interesting and complete that they have to work hard to win his attention. They want to compete for his admiration, not to automatically be the center of his existence. But our modern society has taught men the exact opposite. Men have taught us to treat them like queens, to give them everything from the very first moment, and to do everything to satisfy them. The result: frustrated men, bored women, and empty relationships. The Socratic truth is that attraction arises from opposites. When you're predictable, when you're always available, when you don't offer secrets or challenges, you lose the ability to generate real attraction. Not because you're a bad person, but because you're not authentically masculine. Masculinity, authenticity isn't about muscles or aggression, but about direction, purpose, calm leadership, and emotional self-reliance. It's about being so focused on your goals and so clear about your values that people are naturally drawn to your energy. When Socrates walked the streets of Athens, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He lived by his principles and sought the truth, questioning everything, and people were naturally drawn to him, not because he was trying to please, but because he was. Because he represented something solid in a world full of uncertainty. You can become that kind of man, but first you have to stop chasing external validation and start building internal validation. You have to build a solid relationship with yourself before attempting a real relationship with another person. This means spending time alone, not just physically but emotionally as well. It means learning to be happy with your own company. It means developing hobbies, interests, and goals that don't depend on being around or anyone's approval. When you do this, when you truly become emotionally self-sufficient, women begin to notice. They feel that you are different from other men. They know that you are not desperate for their attention. You do not change your personality depending on who is around you. You are consistently, reliably authentic, and here is the ultimate irony. The less you need them, the more they want you, not because you are playing games or manipulating, but because you are truly a man of. Appreciate a man with purpose, a man who doesn't rely on external validation to know who he is. Socrates was sentenced to death because his ideas threatened the status quo. He made people question truths they took for granted. He showed that the emperor was naked, that many of the things society considered important were actually illusions. When you truly understand these principles and apply them in your life, you become a threat to the status quo of modern relationships. You cease to nurture it. Toxic dynamics based on need and neediness. You stop being manipulable. You become unpredictable in a healthy way, and maybe that's why some women prefer that you don't have access to this information. Not because it's bad, but because a man who really knows and values himself is harder to control, harder to manipulate, more demanding to conquer. But here's the deeper truth. High-quality women, those who are really worth it, don't want to control or manipulate. You want a partner, not a subordinate. You want someone who is your equal, not someone who downplays themselves to feel bigger. How do you put this into practice? Start small. First, focus on your motivations. When you do something, ask yourself, am I doing this because I really want to or because I want to impress someone? When you're with a woman, you pay attention to her standards. You change your personality. You agree to things you would normally disagree with. Give up your plans and interests to be available for them. If the answer is yes, act out of desire, not reason. Develop a routine of self-reflection. Socrates said that an unexamined life is not worth living. This means regularly taking time to reflect on your actions, your motivations, and your progress, not obsessively, but consciously. Set clear boundaries not only with other people but also with yourself. What are your non-negotiable values? What would you never do? Regardless of external pressure, if you are aware of this, it will be much more difficult to be manipulated or influenced. Constantly invest in yourself, not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Read books that challenge you. Learn new skills. Seek out experiences that make you grow. Become interesting for your own sake, not because you are trying to impress anyone. And perhaps most importantly, learn to deal with rejection when you don't need everyone's approval. Rejection stops being frightening and all that remains is information. Some people accept you as you are. Others don't. And that's okay. The right woman for you will admire your authenticity and not try to change you. She will respect your boundaries and not try to cross them. She will enrich your life, not dominate it. But to attract that kind of woman, you must first become the kind of man who deserves that kind of partner. Socrates never promised that the path to self-knowledge would be easy. On the contrary, he warned that it would be uncomfortable, challenging, and sometimes even painful. When you truly examine yourself, you discover things about yourself that you would rather not know. You discover destructive patterns, irrational fears, emotional dependencies that you didn't even know you had. But you also discover strengths that you didn't know you had. You discover a leadership quality that lay dormant. You discover a creativity that was suppressed. You discover an inner peace that didn't depend on external circumstances. And when you develop that inner peace, when you truly know and accept yourself, you will. Magnetic in a way that can't be faked or imitated. People sense your authenticity, your genuine confidence, your emotional stability. Women, in particular, are extremely sensitive to this. They can tell the difference between a man feigning confidence and one who truly knows and values himself. They can sense when you're operating from a position of need as opposed to abundance. Abundance doesn't mean having a lot of money or many opportunities. Relational abundance is a mindset, a state of being. It means knowing that you are complete within yourself, that you have value independent of external validation, that you can create happiness and meaning in your life without depending on others. When you operate from this mindset of abundance, you stop chasing and begin attracting. You stop trying to convince people of your value and simply demonstrate it through your actions and your presence. Now, I want to tell you something that may be difficult to accept. Maybe you're not ready yet. For this transformation, it may be more comfortable to continue blaming women, society, and circumstances for your relationship problems. It may be easier to continue believing that you are a victim of circumstances rather than taking full responsibility for your life. Socrates encountered resistance because his ideas required people to take responsibility for their own lives and their own decisions. It is much more comfortable to blame others, follow the crowd, and live on autopilot, but this path never leads to true satisfaction or fulfillment. If you have come this far, if something within you resonates with these ideas, perhaps you are ready to begin the Socratic journey of self-knowledge. Perhaps you are ready to stop being a slave to your needs and become the master of your own life. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is a gradual process, sometimes painful, always challenging, but the men who make this journey discover something that is worth more than any external achievement they discover. Who they really are, and when you really know who you are, when you truly value and respect yourself, you naturally attract people who also value and respect themselves. You stop accepting crumbs of attention and start demanding quality relationships. You stop tolerating toxic behavior because your self-esteem no longer allows you to. You stop putting yourself down to make others feel bigger because you understand your own worth. You are selective with your energy, your time, your attention because you realize that you valuable resources. Remember the question I asked at the beginning: why do some truths seem to be hidden from you? Perhaps it's not because someone is actively trying to hide them, but because these truths require a level of emotional maturity and self-awareness that few men are willing to develop. It's easier to blame women for their complexity than to examine our own behaviors and patterns. It's easier to complain about the difficulties of modern relationships than to take responsibility for our attractiveness and value as a partner, but if you are willing to do the inner work, if you are willing to honestly examine yourself and consciously grow, you can become the kind of man who naturally attracts healthy and fulfilling relationships, not because you have learned seduction techniques or psychological games, but because you have become truly attractive through the development of your character, your authenticity, your inner strength. Socrates lived and died by his principles. He chose the truth over popularity, integrity over recognition, growth over convenience, and even more than 2,000 years after his death, his ideas continue to change lives. You have the same choice before you. You can continue to live reactively, chasing external recognition and changing your personality depending on who is around you, or you can begin the Socratic journey of self-knowledge, building a solid relationship with yourself and finding out who you really are beneath all the social masks. The choice is yours, but remember, a life without. The most important test you can take is the test of your own soul, your own being, your own values and motivations. When you do this, when you truly know and accept yourself, you no longer need external validation to know who you are. You become self-reliant, emotionally confident, and naturally attractive. And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover that the truth they're trying to hide from you is simply this: you have always been whole, always. You had value, you were always worthy of love and respect, you just forgot, you allowed the world to convince you otherwise, but now you remember, and once you remember who you really are, nothing and no one can take that away from you.